Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you to the Commission for the proposal for a European recovery package and all the officials who have been working on this. This big package is definitely a positive step for the EU and a much needed one, I believe. The scope of the package is not what we as a parliament have been asking for, but still a good way to start the negotiations. And the best part of it, however, is of course the way it is going to be financed. Common European bonds is a step into more solidarity and a signal that Europe can and will be a union of solidarity. My special thanks obviously go to Commissioner Ferreira, who seems to got an overall big financial increase for the cohesion funds. The increased budget for of the JTF is just what it needs and to be a viable tool for the transition of Europe's coal-reliant industry. And it's even more than we as Greens have been expected. However, if we take a closer look at the cohesion funds and see it in the bigger frame of the whole package, I have to say that I do not understand the underlying intentions which led to these potpourri on the expenditure side. If we as EU want to design a recovery package, it has to drive the future. Its powerful name, NextGenerationEU, and the blazing speech Commissioner President von der Leyen stirred huge hopes in me. But the deeper I look into the details, the more disappointed I get. In the storm of an upcoming recession, the EU needs to invest in its people, in particular the most vulnerable. In a time in which member states might not be able to sufficiently fund social programs, we see a new proposal with a cut to the European Social Fund ESF. This does not make any sense. Also, the cultural sector is struggling under Corona. Events like concerts and theaters were closed first and will be the last ones to open. This cultural sector, which makes up 3.8% of the EU's GDP and is of very high importance to the touristic sector, will be one of the hardest hit in our society. And the Com's proposal to that regard cuts for the Creative Europe program. On the day that Ursula von der Leyen was elected as president of the Commission, she talked about the importance to make Europe a climate neutral continent in 2050 and to support the young generation. Now, her proposal has no higher climate spending target, and Erasmus is going to get an even smaller slice of the cake than even in the proposal of 2018. But especially in these times of crisis, it's important to invest in education and a future generation that believes in the European idea by experiencing it. This budget could also be a signal towards young climate activists that their voice has been heard by politics and that their protest matters. I think it's important to bring these points up even in a REGI meeting, because as a direct elected representative of the European people, it is our responsibility to figure out the best way to help people and the regions. And this might be more doable with other funds than REGI funds. And if we look at the REGI funds, we see two big increases, the JTF and REACT-EU. And if in regards to the JTF, I have no issue at all. The problem and the solution are aligned and there's an adequate funding for it. Thus, I have no doubts that this fund will work as intended. However, a new REACT-EU program and at the same time cuts to the traditional cohesion funds is quite questionable. The REACT-EU should run under the rules of Corona Response Investment Initiative, which we implemented as an exceptional situation, as a temporary means. To now pour 55 billion in this fund with maximum flexibility that even in crisis was barely used by any regions, with no defined field of investment, with a very vague allocation key which allows the member states themselves to decide which region gets funding and which not, with no earmarking for digitalization and climate spending, even though those are the new priorities for the Commission, with no bound expenses for youth unemployment or social schemes, and no prohibition on fossil fuels, even though the package is called Next Generation EU, is for my point useless and not what we need right now. Don't get me wrong, we need 55 billions and we need bigger investments. Europe needs investments in tackling rising youth unemployment rates. Europe needs investments to make the union more socially reliant. Europe needs investments in the future, in digitalization. Europe needs investments in tackling climate change. Europe needs investments to triple Erasmus and support the cultural and creative sector. But Europe does not need investments in a watering can given in the hands of people who use the corona pandemic to boost up their authoritarian game, diminish the freedom of expression, and destroy the trust in European solidarity. As a REGI coordinator, I will not often do so, but in this particular situation, I am calling to shift some money, or even all money, from REACT-EU into the youth and culture programs, as well as into the ESF+. For all funds that we have in REGI, let us use the rules we have under the existing cohesion funds to target the region's needs. Let's make this Next Generation EU fund a new success story and a real recovery package for the next generation. But for this, we need to change the Commission's proposal. Let's invest in the people and in the future, but let's do it smart, with clear guidance of where the money should go. That's something we owe to the Europeans, in particular, the youth.